You're listening to a Meatsmith Harvest. This is the podcast that encourages and equips you to grow your home around the harvest. Welcome, Meatsmiths. This dialogue picks up where we left off in our last episode's conversation. You can find part 1 on our website, YouTube, or iTunes. If the content resonates with you, please consider supporting our team by going to patreon.com/Meatsmith and donating a small monthly pledge. This goes directly toward more free media headed your way. Thanks for staying tuned for part 2. Well, so did you talk about, I had to leave for about 10 minutes there to lay Therese down, but did you talk about the culinary value of, or some culinary experiences we've had with deer?
So good. Yeah, deer is delicious. It provides one challenge. After you've managed the age by denuding some of the muscles from the fascia and using that fascia, your challenge is the leanness. So deer are frustratingly lean. And that is probably not the case across the whole country. I think some deer will get a serious fat cap and maybe even some serious fat in between the muscles of their flesh, which is cool.
Really?
But they will very rarely, if ever, unless, again, by concerted effort, which usually only happens through generations of domestication, they will never have marbling.
Okay.
Marbling is really forgiveness for all cooking.
Right.
Like it's just, there's fat in between each muscle fiber. You're not going to overcook it. It's going to be harder at least to make it dry and chewy.
Yeah.
Whereas deer is highly prone to dryness and chewitude because it has zero marbling. Mm-hmm. And even the fat cap, is not quite enough. It's wonderful. It's good, but it's lean. Mm-hmm. And that's the challenge. So I think part of your hunting equipment, your setup, should be a kuni in the backyard.
Right.
You should have a little lard pig.
And a larding needle.
You will love it. I mean, really, I'm not being facetious. I think hunters should raise a little fat lard pig. Mm-hmm. Not only, they're so easy to raise, they're so little. Mm-hmm. They don't eat a lot, and they turn it all into fat. And there's very few people that actually really want all the fat that a lard pig giveth. Mm-hmm. But hunters do, because the deer giveth none. Mm-hmm. But the lard pig will just be 70% pork back fat. And guess what you need for all your deer is pork back fat.
Yeah.
And that is essential not only for fresh cooking of the, if you're going to do it. Why is he opening the smoker? Johnny.
Oh, I'll go talk to him.
We just started the smoker, and my kids are like, hey, let's play in the smoker with the fire and stuff. Oh, God. Okay, but anyway, what are we talking about? You want the back fat not only for larding and barding, which we'll talk about, but primarily for the sausage, if you're going to make sausage. Did you happen to notice if any flame was coming up out of the Weber?
No.
Okay, good.
None.
Perfect. Looks like blue smoke, which is what we want.
Yeah.
But speaking of using the back fat, you can use it for larding and barding, which I think we'll talk about, but especially for the sausage. So venison meat is weird. It's if you grind it and you make a sausage out of it, it has the tendency to turn into rubber. It's a weird thing. Anyone that has had venison burgers will experience this slightly unfortuitous surprise. It's like rubbery. If you grind venison meat, and then you grill it, and if you grill it just to like a point of doneness, not really even overcooked, it's rubbery and dry. And that's because it's extremely lean. And it is very easily broken down. So it is highly susceptible. No, I'm not going to speculate. I don't know why. But it is highly susceptible to the emulsification process, which is not really the emulsification process technically, but it's where the enzymes in the meat, through the grinding friction, the myosin conversion happens, which like undoes proteins.
Okay.
And so it makes it a paste really quickly. And then if you cook that paste, it cooks it into rubber, and it's a very unpleasant thing. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to venison, because I love venison burgers, I do grind it. I try to do it on a coarser grind. And it's a little weird, but it makes sense though. You don't want to mix it at all, which is hard.
Okay.
Kind of silly. So, and this is assuming you're not adding any fat to it, because as we'll talk about, fat is forgiveness.
Okay.
But if you're just grinding it for like ground venison.
Okay.
And even when I'm wrapping it, like I'm barely touching it. I'm trying to not touch it while I'm wrapping it, which is almost impossible.
Because you don't want that chemical conversion to happen.
Yeah, and it happens through friction. If you mix it, you'll just turn it into this homogeneous paste with no chunks and no air, and it'll just be rubber. It's like a glue. And so when I grind it, like I'll try to grind it onto a flat sheet. All at the same height, you know what I mean? The same depth, like an inch or whatever, inch and a half.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of like cut them.
Oh my gosh.
Into burgers, and then you slip those on the frying pan or on the barbecue.
Okay.
And it really helps. It's significant. You don't want to mix it up too much.
Dedication.
Yeah. And the rubberiness is not that bad. Okay. I'm obsessing a little bit here. But I do like, you lose some of the juiciness and the full flavor.
I know.
So
yeah.
That's if you're just doing straight ground venison.
Yeah.
And I have never had venison fat that tastes poorly, so I always try to I never trim any of the fat on the carcass, and I'll throw that right in with the grind too.
It needs it.
Yeah, absolutely. But really what it needs is what all sausage needs, which is pork back fat.
Yeah.
And that is the subcutaneous fat of pork, which has a little more collagen in it than, say, the internal body fat. A little more protein. So it keeps its structure. It stays in nice fat little chunkies when it runs through a grinder. It is not pasted by the grinder. It's not turned into extruded as strictly a paste. It's actually chopped into little chunks. Mm-hmm. And that is the key to sausage enjoyment. Mm-hmm. And with I say for any sausage, for pork, like I want it to be 30% back fat, a pork sausage. And that's pork that has lots of inter and intramuscular fat to boot. But venison has none. And so when I make venison sausage, I'm like, yeah, we need 50% pork back fat.
Yeah.
And then 50% venison. And I know that sounds crazy, but you just need to trust me.
No, oh yeah.
This is why you need your lard pig in the backyard. And you want to do it on a coarser grind.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't even know what plates I have. I have 2 plates on my grinder. One has small holes, one has big. And the big ones are probably 3/8. Yeah, they're 3/8.
Yeah.
So 3/8 is great. That works really well. Grind the venison on that, and then grind equal quantity of pork back fat.
And then you will then mix it with the vigor.
Then you can mix it by hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at that point, the mixing is a matter of taste. Do you like a sausage with a little more texture, or do you want it to be a little more homogeneous? The more you mix it, the more homogeneous it will be. Mm-hmm. And that's my solution for the ground lean venison problem, is add lots lard pig. Lard pig is the solution.
Yeah.
Grow a lard pig.
Okay, so then larding and barding, you mentioned that.
Yeah, so larding is where you get this really cool little tool. I have one up there that is, that's a needle that is seldom used.
You find this on Amazon?
Erstwhile derided.
Is it?
Yeah, I did. I found this one on Amazon. This is a larding needle. And what it is a tube with a pointy end. But the tube is not completely closed off. It has a little slide. You can hear that. That slides in a channel along the whole length of the tube. So what you can do is get yourself a lard pig. Slaughter your lard pig. Scald and scrape it so as to retain the maximum quantity of its salubrious back fat. And then cut the back fat into squares and freeze it. And if it's a lard pig that you have let to grow, over a year, you'll have back fat sheets that are almost definitely 3 inches thick. So lots of back fat. Mm-hmm. And you get that out of the freezer, and while it's still real cool from the freezer, but definitely thawed, you shove this in there, this needle, and you twist And as you twist, you're cutting a tube of solid back fat, and then you withdraw the needle, and residing in the needle will be a noodle of back fat. Yep. And then you go over to the venison haunch, which is the back leg, which is the highest concentration of meat to bone. It's the bottom round, the top round, the eye round, and the knuckle, and the single solitary femur bone in the middle. So it's a ton of lean meat, high concentration that needs lots of fat. And then you take your larding needle with its ribbon of fat and you inject it into the meat, and you hold the slide against the meat and withdraw the needle, and it deposits your string of back fat into the flesh. And you do that many times.
Okay.
And it's really awesome, and it works great. And then you can roast a venison haunch. Have you ever roasted a venison haunch? It's so wonderful. It's huge. It's massive. A whole back leg with the femur in it. It's such a huge feast.
It's a great party feast.
It's delicious. And I've roasted them on spits. We did that for Wallace's birthday one year.
Well, and what else?
Roadkill venison.
What else did we do to that leg? I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, so I knit it with strips of back fat, but then I think I also barded it, which is another cool word. Okay. Which is where you apply a layer of fat to the exterior of the joint of the meat. And I think I just did a thin sheet of back fat around it. Okay. I think I had a sheet of back fat from a non-lard pig, so it was only 3/4 to an inch thick, maybe even a little thinner. And I just wrapped it around the entire haunch and tied it off. And then you just slow cook that over open flame.
I remember brining it too.
Oh, did we brine it?
We brined it.
Good for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we did all the fat with it too. But that really helped. Like a ham, it helped. Totally. Help pre-process it a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. So that, of course, that's the biggest no-brainer is the brining. Mm-hmm. So the one way to combat the lean and the dry is the fat. You add the fat. You could wrap a whole roast in the caul fat, which is the frilly lace, the beautiful lace that is on the inside of all animals. The most mild and of which is the pork caul fat. You could do it with venison. Why not? You could do it with venison caul fat. Usually venison caul fat is very thin, if like almost indetectable. Mm-hmm. You can almost not, it's so thin, but pork is nice and thick. But the other way to deal with the lean and the dry is the brine. Mm-hmm. And the brine is just genius. It's so genius because it actually saturates the leg with salty, flavorful water. And that takes care of the juiciness and it keeps it juicy. Yeah. But salt has a similar effect on the muscle fibers that cooking does on the proteins in that it breaks them down. Yeah. And so it actually tenderizes the meat. Marinades have the same thing. You do acid and salt and pepper and stuff, some form of vinegar or acid, wine. Anything acidic and salty actually tenderizes the flesh. Mm-hmm. And it enhances its water retaining abilities. Like it'll hold on to juiciness better. And so brine your venison. Mm-hmm. Do brine it. It's so brilliant.
We only did it for like a few days even. It didn't stay in the brine for weeks, I don't think. Yeah. No, it wasn't that long. Yeah. And we weren't even being that technical about it. Like I wasn't going to brine it and then let it equalize for 4 weeks, which is kind of what it takes to get the salt to penetrate all the way to the bone. Mm-hmm. And it was awesome. Mm-hmm. It was so good. Mm-hmm. And if you were to brine it, I would say I found this really great brine method that's extraordinarily flexible. I'm sure we'll talk about in another podcast episode, but you can weigh the meat that you want to brine, and then that's your starting place. You weigh the meat, and then half the weight of the meat will be the weight of the brine. Right. And then you have, and then the weight of the brine is an accumulation. It's the combination of the weight of the salt and the water, if you know what I mean, and any other ingredients you put in there. And so weigh the meat that you want to brine, and then half that will be the weight of the water, and then you can just decide what percentage of the brine of salt quantity you want the brine to be. Okay. And you could do like 9 to 12% or something. It's a very mild brine.
which means that you can leave it in there for a really long time and it won't get over salty on you.
It's a really good way to economize your salt usage too, especially for people like us who are constantly using brines and then dumping them, and it feels like you're just dumping dollars down the drain.
Yeah, because they're single use.
Yeah. So it really just lets the water just come up to the tippy top of the meat.
It's a great method.
And yeah.
So definitely brine your venison. There's no reason not to treat venison like ham. You could even brine it and then smoke it if you wanted, and that would be awesome. But you definitely want to brine it first, because that ensures the juiciness and the tenderness, which would otherwise be really hard to achieve in a low, slow cooking environment. Yeah. Or in any roast of venison. The other way to avoid the dry lean is to embrace the rare.
Okay. Yeah.
And especially with venison, like the backstrap, you want rare anyway. You know, if you're going to do backstrap steaks or something, or a backstrap roast, just the whole long thing, rare, do not overcook it. You'll just think of cooking it like wringing out all of the juiciness. You're going to take the venison and just twist it like a wet towel and wring out all of the juice, all of the flavor. That's what cooking does. And so you just want to cook it enough to brown the outside and make it crispy on the outside, and then just to rare, on the inside. Yeah. And you'll really appreciate it. It's not going to taste more strongly, or it's not going to taste weird. It will taste weird if you let it get cold before you cut into it. So don't do that. But, when it's still hot and warm, but with a small amount of rest. So now I sound like I'm contradicting myself. So if you pan fry a venison steak, just let it sit for 10 minute. Okay. Even at rare, it'll still be warm. It'll still be pleasantly warm. Yeah. It's when it's like downright cold in the middle. Yeah. For rareness that it loses some magic. But yeah, don't overcook venison.
Can you talk, maybe in closing, I guess this is maybe a more broad topic too, but deer kind of makes me think about it more. And that is just developing your palate and allowing yourself to, because we all have our threshold of disgust, let's say. Yeah. Or just, you feel that, I don't know if I can quite stomach that. And we're all at different places in that. But I guess I want to encourage people to give some of these things a try that you haven't allowed yourself to try yet, because it's always rewarding, and if you just stay open-minded too. And I think about all the times that I've limited myself, and I haven't let myself try something new because I'm afraid of maybe what someone else is thinking, or or I've let my fears get to me, my fears that I haven't researched fully yet, which is usually just, I don't know anything. So you're always afraid of things that you don't know about. Yeah. And so educate yourself a little bit, or, I just want to encourage people that it's okay to, whenever I want to have someone try a trotter, for instance, a pig trotter, I always get immense pushback from people. And I'm like, no, really? You just need to put it in your mouth. It's so delicious. And I know it's weird, and to our culture, at least. To other parts of the world, it's really not. But, and without judging either, because again, I still have things that I'm pretty grossed out by. But I guess we all need that encouragement to just take one step into the unknown and try it, and truly allow yourself to be blown away. Yeah. Without your prejudices hindering you.
It's a very hopeful thing to do, because it's an assertion that it will taste so good that it's worth the work to acquire that taste. Yeah. And it's an assertion of delight that you have hitherto not experienced yet. Like, I know this is actually going to taste better in a way that I can't even detect right now. In fact, I don't even think it tastes good now. Yeah. But if you keep going, it will. Yeah. And you'll get better at it. And I know it sounds weird. It's like, why would you eat something you don't like? And I think it's better to think, why would you think you don't like something? And no one is a blank slate. Like I used to say that the only tastes worth having are acquired tastes, you know. Mm-hmm. Like you don't like wine right away when you have a sip when you're 7, right?
Yeah.
You acquire that taste, and maybe you use wine as a mechanism to achieve alcohol, but whatever. It's acquired. But I think you could go further and say the only tastes that exist are acquired tastes. And you just, I don't know, I think about this in terms of how we get meat into a food shape and eat it. No one did that because it was obvious. Or no one thought, I might like to kill a pig and stuff its flesh into its own guts and then snack on that.
And let it rot in the middle of room temperature.
Which is what salami is. And what sausage was before refrigeration and freezing. So that was acquired by force of necessity. And then it's only recent that we have been able to eat whatever we like at the moment. I think that is a amazing and like what is it? That's a revolution we're still metabolizing of the grocery stores. You can just go and eat anything from anywhere in the world immediately. It's just crazy. It wasn't always like that. You would eat the same thing for generations, centuries, you know, at the same time of year, over and over and over and over. And I think that not only do you acquire tastes in a lifetime, this is my theory, I have no idea, but you acquire tastes over multiple generations. And I think you even get good at digesting things. And you have a taste for whatever your people ate.
Oh, sure. Well, that's, I think, scientifically shown now, is certain groups of people actually need certain proteins, you know, maybe dairy proteins for Northern Europeans or not dairy proteins for other peoples. I don't know. Yeah,
non-dairy cultures, you know, pastoral. And so really, they're all acquired tastes anyway. They're all something you ate over and over again until you liked it a little bit, which is so weird. That sounds really, I don't know, puritanical, or what does that sound like? It sounds like you're stifling the validity of your individual likes and dislikes, you know, and your tastes. But you're actually not. You're calling them up to something better. You're actually reaching beyond the horizon of your capacity. And it's really cool. It's an act of faith. It's like you're stepping out into the unknown, even against some better evidence of your own taste buds.
Sure.
Like, I don't like this right now, but I'm going to keep going on it. And you will change your taste buds. And the readiest evidence of this, that you have altered the way you taste, is to go back to what you ate before. If you discipline yourself, for instance, in eating bacon, that you cure yourself with just sea salt, and then you go try store-bought bacon, you know, maybe a month into eating your own, you will be blown away. Why did I ever eat this? This does not taste like bacon, you know? And you've really, you have to artificially limit yourself to the good thing now, because everything is absolutely available to you. Before, it was reality limited you. Now it's a matter of self-discipline to actually limit yourself. And it doesn't dull your tastes, it sharpens them. And it enhances the enjoyment of your food exponentially. That's the thing. There's no cap on it. There's no limit to it. There's a limit to the bag of Doritos, and that's just eating more bags of Doritos. And it is never satisfying. But that MSG, man, it just calls you further down in that bag into the next one over and over and over again. And it's a cycle. Whereas, you know, the real flavor of, you know, a raw venison steak. Real, not raw. Well, yeah, sure. Try some raw. That'd be delicious.
What you were just saying.
Or really rare.
Right. Well, so we all have to hush up our inner 7-year-old a little bit. And because there's been moments where I see something and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. But I see someone maybe I respect and they're eating it with pleasure. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, I just don't want to limit myself, to step beyond, like you said. But also that element of necessity is good to remember too. Like right now, I tend to buy broccoli a lot because it is a vegetable that my children love. And so I have to capitalize on that. But it, honestly, when times are good financially, I tend to throw away the broccoli stems.
Oh, yeah.
But where times are lean and I just can't get to the grocery store for that extra vegetable run, or we shop at our local farmers market too for vegetables in season especially.
Or farm stands.
Yeah,
we tend to avoid the market.
We do. That's what I meant, farm stands. We have our favorite.
That's a chaos we would not contend with 6 children.
Parking outside of a farm stand in a 15-seater van with 6 kids now, it's hilarious.
That's a Titanic feat.
It's a circus. Yeah. So taking them into the market, that's we have not been that brave. But anyway, so in our leaner times, I will chop up. I'll skin. I'll slice it I'll peel basically with a potato peeler.
Yeah.
The skins of the broccoli stems, and then I'll slice them kind of like you slice a carrot. And then I fry those and maybe make a cream sauce out of them.
Yeah.
And, it's like the inside of an artichoke.
It's
and you would never know that if you
it's an artichoke heart,
need
basically.
to. Yeah. It's so anyway, that's just an example. Like allowing necessity and even pushing yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
And suppressing that inner 7-year-old that just wants to go, ooh.
Yeah. Limitless options only promise like indulgence. They don't actually deliver it.
Sure.
They sell you short, It's when you're forced to be creative.
Yeah.
How many people do you would say truly share your back to the land values, or your passion for home-scale craft meat curing, or simply love the multifaceted beauty of a good meal as obsessively as you do? Maybe a handful? At FarmsteadMeatsmith.com, we've created an online community of hundreds of omnivores from around the world and a platform for them to learn from and inspire one another. In addition to our major semi-annual hands-on educational event, the Family Pig, here at our Pacific Northwest homestead, over at FarmsteadMeatsmith.com, we host a purely digital membership program with an archive of film and textual resources years deep now, for you to dive deeper into your food journey with. And both our classes and online program include access to our private community Facebook page for your continued education and fellowship. We've been told that our classes are life-changing and the membership program unparalleled in quality and quantity. To get a taste of our education, search FarmsteadMeatsmith.com and our YouTube channel for our free films, conversations, and downloads. Explore how we and other meatsmiths across the globe may best come alongside you, putting the knife in your hand, article by article, and comment thread by comment thread, can support you in building your home around the harvest. Please head to FarmsteadMeatsmith.com today.
One other thing I was thinking about venison, speaking of limitation, is venison is the wild animal, that we eat.
Right.
We categorize it as a wild animal. I think that Larousse Gastronomique, I'm sitting on it, the French dictionary on food, it defines deer as the wild ruminant,
Okay.
And it's strange. It made me think about our categories of wild and domesticated, which obviously they start to break down at certain points. And deer are on Vashon. It's really hard for me to think of them as wild. And a lot of deer, even elk, they're right in there with the humans. Granted, they haven't been subjected to generations of selective breeding, at least not intentional on the part of humans. And tracking lines and all that stuff and intentional inbreeding. But they're definitely getting pressure from humans and selective pressure just by virtue of the fact that we inhabit the same ecology. And so we're changing each other's. as our daughters would say.
It's become a common phrase in the house.
Yeah, arch others.
Arch others.
And so it makes me think of, I definitely believe that to fulfill the nature of a pig, it must be et. Because look at what we've done to it. We've domesticated it for centuries. And it would become an unmanageable mass in the wild, which it has become. Mm-hmm. And it's very damaging, when domesticated pigs farrow or escape into the wild, they get huge. They become monstros because of those domesticated genetics. And quickly the size shrinks back down because of there's selective pressures in the wild ecology that aren't in the barn. Mm-hmm. And it changes their shape. But I was thinking, like, with venison, there's something amazing about, we've been hunting them for so long, and it's actually, we've been hunting them, being wild ruminants, longer than we've been domesticating ruminants that we eat. I think that's we can establish that.
Okay.
It's when we settled down in the cities and really started doing the agricultural thing, growing grains, that we were domesticating them. Before that, we were following them.
Okay, right. Yeah.
And I don't know, when we broke from being, hunt, like just absolute hunters to herdsmen, mm-hmm. or maybe it's hunters to pastoralists, mm-hmm. you follow the green grass, and then you start to fence the animals, and then you become a herdsman or a shepherd. Mm-hmm. But before all of that, it's just hunt. You hunt them.
There's something very human about that.
There is.
Yeah.
And we're good predators, and we're good at that. And I think that they were really intelligent, and they seem to be, they react to us as predators. They flee. And it's not so much that we are, I don't know, it's a very civilized thing to hunt a wild animal. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
I think it might actually be the seedbed of civilization.
Okay. Well, yeah, certainly in the British culture, that's high culture.
It's like liturgized.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Colorful dress, titles, songs, chants.
Oh, the hunt is up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have that song on our website.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a small thing. It's this context, and I think that the confrontation of a hunter with a wild animal implies so many judgments, and they're rooted, like value judgments, moral judgments, and they're rooted in the concrete work, the toil that it takes. Mm-hmm. And it's it's not just incidental that it is efficient and humane to kill a deer decisively. Mm-hmm. That's both. Mm-hmm. It's a ton of work to maim a deer. Right. And then to chase it and try to get it again. Because even after you've maimed it, it's probably still your best option amongst, they don't travel in herds, but amongst a group of deer that are not wounded. At least you can follow that one. But it's inefficient, mm-hmm. And it just makes me think, if we're so, how far can we root our morality in this practical way we harvest in food? We follow this efficiency, because to me it smacks of this possibility that morality is efficient. It's not this arbitrary imposition from above, an abstract fiction that we make up and then kind of throw on the indifferent objective universe around us. I think we derived it from it. It arises from our interaction. And I can think of no other more intense, essential, demanding interaction than between a human and the animal he intends to eat, he or she intends to eat.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's a big moment.
Yeah.
Every time it happens,
Yeah. It's weighty.
It's sort of like, what does he say when he landed on the moon? It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. It's kind of like that. Like it is just one man and a deer, or one slaughterman and a pig. I think it actually, applies to this, even the domestic slaughter context, unless it's so mediated by technology you don't even notice that a killing is going on.
Okay.
But we're not talking about that. But it's like a microcosm of all humanity and of where our choices get their force and their value and receive their practical judgment by the laws of nature.
That's beautiful.
Something like that.
Well, in that, I think that applies to any kind of hunting. Like we mentioned the high culture British form with the hounds. The hounds and exactly, the horses and the hounds and the red coats and everything. But all the way even to certain African cultures that hunt on foot by literally chasing their animal to the death for
incredible
days, hours at least, many dozens of hours. And that's an amazing feat too. And in both cases, it's people arising to their potential. And that's we should be striving for that. So we're not just filling the belly.
Right.
We are, filling the hole. We're becoming more human.
Yeah, and I think we're also not just predators like lions or wolves. It's interesting, but even the most primitive, and I'm just totally pontificating here, but the most primitive hunting style, so-called, that I can imagine is the example of men chasing the kudu in Africa.
Okay.
And they run it to exhaustion. They track it without even being able to see it, which is bloody amazing.
Yeah.
Blows my mind.
That's a miracle.
They track an invisible animal. The same one, and they don't lose it. That's not primitive. Like, that's not primitive.
Yeah, the documentarians that have covered that are spinning it in not a very good way.
It was David Attenborough. He's got a little bit of the colonizing impulse. I don't know. It was condescending. It really drove me nuts. But, that is a masterful art. Talk about believing in the invisible. Like, he's chasing after something he cannot see.
Faith,
It's incredible.
Yeah.
3 men, and they do it, and they run after it for, I think, a whole day. And, being upright with lots of lung capacity, they can do that. Humans can. We can run for a long time.
Yeah.
Kudu can't.
Okay.
They exhaust themselves. And this thing did, and it fell to the ground. It was going to just die right in front of them. But they took it another step that I think, I don't know, I'm still trying to work this out in my brain. Lions and wolves don't quite do, even though those are pack hunters, which I think humans have been. They deal the death with a tool. He threw a spear right at the heart of the kudu. And it was so poetic. It was the way they filmed it. I don't know if this is actually how it happened, but this is how it appeared. They finally come up on this animal. And finally, after a whole day, it's dusk, it's getting dark, the kudu turns and faces them. And like at first sight, that's when the spear leaves the hand of the hunter. And of course, he's so close, it's a guarantee. Like he's, I don't know, 5 yards away, maybe 7. There's right there.
Yeah.
And he throws the spear, and the kudu is so exhausted, it doesn't struggle. It seems like it just falls down dead instantly. It was really poetic. It was so amazing to see. And I think that there's something different about that, because that's how wolves hunt. They will chase bison until they exhaust themselves. They also kind of start eating them when they're still alive.
Yeah.
Lions, they tend to deal a death. They have those huge canines so that they can do cervical dislocation and stop the body movements. So I think there's a practical element there. But we Homo sapiens, man, we just can't help but turn the meal into a feast. It's not just an expiration. It's not just filling the hole. Everybody get while the getting is good. Yeah,
it's in a lot of ways it can become the beginning of, new life. I'm thinking of, actually I have one more example to give, because you're drumming them up for me, but we watched another documentary called Humans, I think, on Netflix, or we'll have to look up what that is, but talking about different amazing things that humans have done.
Yeah.
And
Human Planet, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And this 15-year-old boy, and it's a rite of passage for him to not. He starts by climbing a cliff and stealing a baby falcon of some kind out of its mother's nest. So that's no joke. And then he raises that.
Yeah.
You know, for months, if not years, and then finally him and his father, they go out on his first. Well, he trains it. You know, he trains it that whole time to hear his voice, and you know, and he blinds it. You know, during certain times so he can get used to it. And there's a whole ritual behind it. And this is in Mongolia?
Yeah.
Is that right?
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they captured all this footage, but then they show him on his first hunting expedition with this falcon, and it's an amazing drama. And you can just see this boy, he's got this responsibility that's on him, right? Because he's going to have to learn how to feed his family. And it almost brings tears to your eyes thinking about what that is doing to him, his family, his entire culture, his village, that act of hunting. So it's more than just the material process.
Yeah.
There's just the full spectrum of human drama in that act of hunting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's really hard to separate. It's like amputation to separate the culture that arises from that, from just the practical act of train bird to hunt animal that I can't reach because it's on a cliff to feed self.
Yeah.
Like you can't just denude that of all of its heroism.
Yeah.
Because I think it's written into all of us.
Yeah.
It's
my gosh.
Story is
you watched this image of this guy, and he's got his dad next to him. He's got the falcon on his arm. He's riding a horse. Yeah. Okay, so that's a skill. And you're just amazed. Wow, this 15-year-old, right? You think about the 15-year-olds and what they're doing with their lives in America, and you're going, wow, I wasted a lot of time as a 15-year-old, you know? But this is what humans were made to journey upward with, you know? This is what they were made for.
Yeah. It's
lofty.
If we're not careful, we can really dull our edges.
Right. Yeah.
With, mediation.
So go out there and hunt, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, do it. That's why, that kind of brings it full circle. Hunting deer, it's like the last frontier for a lot of people of being able to engage with the cost of their own existence in the most concrete, greasy, bloody way, hairy, hair-covered way. And the fact that we still do it's a little weird because we're way beyond needing to do it in North America, in our culture.
Right.
It's utterly not a necessity. Maybe it is for ecological management reasons, but no one thinks, gee, I'm going to go hungry unless I kill a deer. Maybe very few. And they're probably not getting tags. But people still, why did they go to all this trouble?
Yeah.
To go out to the middle of nowhere to get meat that they could easily purchase. They could even purchase some really nice organic meat. But no, it's the process. They believe in the process.
Well, and how are you defining needs at that point? Like we have our physical needs, but we also, there's we have something called a soul that we have to nourish as well.
Yeah, I think of it as the need for encounter.
Yeah, that's a good word.
To connect with, and it's encounter with like all the things, with yourself,
right?
With the cost of life.
Yeah. With
the price of it. I was thinking that when I was harvesting these 3 little goats yesterday. They're so little, they're just going to this family raises a few goats every year just to kind of fill their freezer, and because they're just delicious. But this is what they're for every year. And I think that engagement with, there's something in us, human about us, that calls out to that experience. It's weird. And I think it's because it's taking on a huge responsibility. You're actually presuming to kill another living thing. Yeah. You better have some good justification for that. And boom, suddenly we have all of civilization, all of our moral codes. That's kind of how I think of it. Huh. Like you need to justify that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, because when you say you encounter yourself, doesn't always mean what you see is good.
No, exactly.
It's not an occasion to like build up your
point.
pride and puff up and wow, look, I killed my own animal.
Yeah.
I've seen that. And
yeah.
you know, but you're encountering, so if you're truly honest, you're seeing the good and the bad, and you're rising to the occasion, but also staying humble.
Yeah.
And like,
well, we still consider it a rite of passage for young people.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
It wasn't long ago, we just had a guy who's telling me a story about his first elk hunt.
Okay.
With his dad. And I think he was 12. And he was 12. And they went up on the ridge. I think they call it Slaughter Ridge.
Okay.
To kill his first elk. His dad just woke him up one morning. He's like, "You're not going to school today, boy. And we're going to go kill an elk." And they go out and he kills an elk. He drops it, shoots it. And he'd shot lots of guns, so that was not the challenge.
Okay.
You know, he knew how to do that, living out in the middle of Montana or somewhere. But then that was the beginning. That was the beginning of the day. It's not just the kill that is the decisive culturing rite of passage for us. It is what you do after is really actually in some ways more important when you think about it. How do you vindicate the kill? The kill is quick and it's over and it's decisive, and you can be naive about it. You can take that step naively without knowing the cost of what it means. But until you dress, transport, and turn that whole thing into food, you have no idea the cost of the kill. And that was his rite of passage, was his uncle and his dad just standing there looking at him like, okay, go ahead.
Wow.
It's an 800-pound elk or whatever, you know, big old cow. And probably not 800. I think that's a little large for an elk. But and he did it, and it took him all day and all night. The only thing they helped him with was to load the carcass into the pickup truck.
Oh my gosh.
And they drove it back to the garage, which they had all set up for processing, you know, and because they hunt, that's what they do. And then they just stood there, and he had to butcher the whole elk and wrap it and freeze it.
Oh my gosh.
And clean up everything. And he didn't finish till like 1 a.m., 2 a.m.
Sure, yeah.
But his dad was sitting on the porch the whole time. And the porch was off limits to the kids. Okay. Because that's where the adults sat. And so you never got to actually sit on the porch. Okay. Which, you know, sounds cruel, but jeez, I totally get it. And so he was sitting on the porch, which is this hallowed ground, you know? Yeah. Only those who are worthy can come in here. And the boy finished up. And his dad said, "Aren't you forgetting something?" And he remembered, oh yeah, he always likes coffee. We always do coffee after an elk slaughter. And so he made the coffee. And his dad made sure that he got a cup of coffee, which he had never had in his life. Wow. The coffee was a rite of passage. And then he sat down, he brought the coffee to his dad on the porch, and he was like, "Where do I go on the porch? I'm not even allowed to be here." And his dad gestured to a chair. He said, "Sit down." And so he sat down on a bench that was on the porch. He's like, no, you sit in your mother's seat. Whoa. This was right next to his father. And so he sat down next to his dad. And from that day on, he said his dad never called him boy again. It was son. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. And, you know, it's so all of that surrounding just the killing of an animal. Yeah. Just the killing of an animal. Yeah. Well, that story didn't make me tear up at all. Because we have a 9-year-old boy, don't we? Yeah. Yeah. And he's becoming so dependable lately, you know, and I see that maturity finally happening. But yeah, it's time to engage him in those mature ways. Yeah, and it's so interesting. I feel that whenever I teach a class, you know, I never really thought of it from this perspective, but I've had people hire me to teach them privately how to slaughter an animal, slaughter their pigs. And I had one guy, I flew out to the East Coast for it. And I feel like I'm kind of in a weird position sometimes in private classes where they want to learn how to do the kill while I'm there. And I've been lucky so far, except for once, where, I feel like I need to have a rite of passage for them, something to build up to the point where I feel comfortable putting the gun in their hands and saying, okay, you shoot your pig. Mm-hmm. And it's weird, it's their pig. They should be able to shoot their pig, clearly. And they do. But I do feel this kind of responsibility, Yeah. I came to teach them, and they've never done this before. And they're going to shoot that pig in the head. And if you've been to my classes, it's to do it properly the way we do it. It's not easy, and you miss sometimes, and it's horrible. It's soul crushing, and you definitely don't want that for your first experience when you're learning how to do this.
Yeah.
And so I remember there was nothing. There's no trick to knowing if someone can shoot a pig well. Like, especially this one guy, he wore glasses that were, I don't know, half an inch thick, very, very thick. Mm-hmm. And it's, he's a PhD. He's a very smart guy. I think he probably destroyed his eyes reading for 10 years, 15 years. I remember experiencing a little bit of that. But he, so everything discommended him to being a good pig killer. He could barely bloody see, okay? Yeah. And then we even took a bunch of practice shots the day before at like a gourd or a pumpkin or something sitting on a log. We never hit it, okay?
Oh.
We missed every time. Yeah. But for some reason, I knew it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of trepidation, but it was more like, wow, this is an anomaly. This is weird that he's missing.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
But I still think he can kill this pig.
Huh.
So the next day came around, and it came time to kill the pigs. And he dropped both of them perfectly.
Wow.
And it was because I knew he took the full burden. They were his pigs. Yeah. He took on the full burden. It wasn't that he was a good marksman, or even that he could see very well, or that he had lots of positive experience to encourage him. He had the opposite of all of that, but he felt responsible.
Yeah.
And so he could take the kill. Mm-hmm. And he did. Mm. And it was perfect. Mm-hmm. Perfect kills. And I know he did it thereafter, way after I left, many times.
Yeah. Neat. Well, I think it's time. I've heard the bell rung a couple times. And
okay.
that means transition for the household. So
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's nice chatting with you this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meatsmith, for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you in another couple weeks when we record and getting these podcasts out to you. Again, join our Instagram page if you haven't already, because I think this might be a trend where we kind of, turn on the phone, let it last as long as it's going to last, and take some questions on the topic that we're chatting about, while we're recording. So find us on Instagram and we'll maybe address your question impromptu.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again, and have a great fall. You can receive updates on all our brand new content as it's released by signing up for our email newsletter. Free download of Brandon's thoughts on meat cookery included. Go to farmsteadmeatsmith.com and sign up on the homepage. Thanks again for listening, and keep in touch.